What's up, everyone? It's Dakota, and welcome back to another Modern video. And with Modern Horizons 3 just a few weeks away from release, we are going to have a huge shakeup to the Modern format. And I actually am going to have a video coming out later this week, kind of talking about some of the winners and losers from Modern Horizons 3 as we, have the full set spoiled and everything like that, which I think would be kind of interesting to see, if those predictions end up coming true. I think we've been pretty good so far on the channel. But this week, we're going to be taking a look at a modern deck, and we're going to be taking a look at Temur Prowess, which is a deck that kind of like waxed and waned in popularity. For a while there, it was, one of the best decks to be playing in modern some years ago. And with the release of Slickshot Show Off and Outlaws of Thunder Junction, the deck has seen a resurgence and has kind of changed its game plan, and especially in some of the things we know from kind of like these, spells type decks, that we've seen from like the blue-red archetypes and things like that. But of course, before we get too deep into Temur Prowess, if you enjoy what you're seeing here and you want to support me and my content, please consider subscribing to the channel and ring the notification bell so you know when future videos get posted. We focus a lot on the modern and pioneer formats along with other longer form videos. So if any of that stuff interests you and you want to just support me and my channel, again, please consider subscribing to the channel. So Temur Prowess is a deck that some people are pretty well aware of, because back in the day there's like these like Stormwing or whatever, where like it was a 5-mana 3/3 like Prowess flyer, but like it costs 2 and a blue less if you cast another spell, and basically the deck was around casting as many free spells as possible to kind of, power up your Prowess creatures, get as many of them in play, and then just swing and attack your opponent for lethal. The Temur Prowess that we've seen nowadays is kind of misleading. Some of them do play cards like Mutagenic Growth. It's a free, like essentially pay 2 life, give a creature +2/+2 until end of turn at instant speed, and it works well with like Slickshot and all the Prowess creatures, because obviously you're putting 3 power off of triggers and then another 2 power off of your spell and everything, which is just a ton of damage that comes through at the end of the day. But this version of Temur Prowess is essentially a straight blue-red build up until you get to the sideboard and you have 4 pick your poison. So I don't make the rules. I guess that technically makes it Temur. It is what it is. But this deck in particular is kind of trying to, do some of the things that the what aren't good in Pioneer as far as building Slickshot decks, where in Pioneer we see a lot of like the pump spells, we see a lot of the burn spells and things like that. This deck kind of gets to do a little bit of both in that regard. So here we have Monastery Swiftspear, Soulscar Mage are 1-mana 1/2 Prowess creatures. Monastery Swiftspear having haste, being able to attack early and often, with Soulscar Mage kind of beefing up your removal spells a little bit, and like Lava Dart, Lightning Bolt, Unholy Heat, and things like that, because if they're not going to end up killing your opponent's creature, whether because they're like have a bunch of pump spells placed on them, whatever, indestructible, this is going to help you kind of get around both of those things and either shrink the creature, so then that eventually when they go to the end step and we kind of clean everything up, they end up dying, or they're just going to be permanently shrunk and they can either be removed later with another removal spell, or you're just going to be able to continue to attack over them. Slickshot Show Off is the main driving force as to why this deck is seeing a resurgence in popularity. 2-mana 1/2 flying haste. When you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +2/+0 until end turn, and you can plot it for 1 and a red. So then if you're worried about removal, you can just plot this, and then you can play it on your turn and follow it up with a bunch of like burn spells and things like that to kind of get it going, as well as just playing it for, as a 2-drop on turn 2. And you have cards like Mishra's Bauble that you can play that are free. They're going to get you a little bit of value, and you're going to be able to cast them. Maybe even Lava Darts that are in your graveyard as well. You can flash back by sacrificing a mountain and get some triggers on your Slickshot that way. Dragon Rage Channeler, while not a Prowess creature, is definitely really good at enabling kind of the second part of our game plan. So Dragon Rage Channeler being a 1-mana 1/1 that whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you surveil 1, and as long as you have 4 more card types in your graveyard, it has +2/+2 flying and attacks each combat if able. This works very well, and even multiple copies of Dragon Rage Channeler works very well with the card Underworld Breach. Now, A fun fact, Underworld Breach is banned in Pioneer, and it is banned in Legacy, and it is a totally fair card in Modern. Tell me how that works. So, Underworld Breach, 2 mana. Each non-land card in your graveyard has Escape. Its Escape cost is equal to the mana cost, plus exiling 3 other cards from your graveyard. So, essentially, to escape something, you can cast it by paying its cost and exiling 3 cards from your graveyard, and then once that card ends up back in your graveyard, it just stays there. So, obviously, the drawback is supposed to be that you're going to pay 2 mana for this, and you're going to be able to cast maybe 1 or 2 spells with it. But thanks to cards like Mishra's Bauble and just being able to cast Lightning Bolt a few times and having Dragon Rage Channeler to kind of fill up your graveyard, not only are you going to be able to double up on some of these powerful spells, we already know some of the things Underworld Breach can do. We would see them in kind of like these, blue-red, like mid-range decks where, like Grixis Shadow kind of popped up really quick. And like even some of the fair like Breach decks, we'd see them kind of pile up cards in their graveyard, and then they cast Mishra's Bauble a bunch of times after casting some of their other powerful spells, and they were going to end up drawing 5, 6, 7 cards and getting some value by getting to kind of fix the top of their deck thanks to Dragon Rage Channeler's Surveil ability, and of course just getting rid of like basically any card that wasn't going to help them win the game. Setting up for future breaches by, of course, getting to surveil enough cards to where then you can get to a point where, like, you play an Underworld Breach, you have, 3 mana untapped, you're going to Lightning Bolt your opponent 3 times, that's 9 damage, and then you have a Slick Shot Show Off, that's going to be a 7 power creature, that's 16 damage just from Slick Shot, and you had to cast the Underworld Breach too, so that's 18 total damage dealt to your opponent. And that kind of shows how explosive that this deck can be, especially if it gets an Underworld Breach in play. Some of the other normal play patterns you can see is like plotting a Slick Shot Show Off and then getting to like play it on your turn 3, and then casting some combination of like Expressive Iteration, like Preordain, Lightning Bolt, Lava Dart, Unholy Heat, whatever, any of these spells. Of course, again, Mishra's Bauble being another good one where you play a Slick Shot Show Off, you're going to cast Bauble, it's going to trigger all of your creatures, and it's just going to make them a lot better. Of course, getting to help with Delirium for Dragon Rage Chandler, so you're tagging with a 3/3, hopefully on turn 2. Which again, like if you play Slick Shot on 2 as well, you're going to get a ton of value and potentially hit your opponent for 6 damage on turn 2, and then like have a pretty good shot at having lethal on the next turn. The mana base, super simple. You're playing 18 lands. You have 2 Arid Mesa, 3 Bloodstained Mire, and 2 Wooded Foothills, 4 Scalding Tarn as your fetch lands. Then you have a Stomping Ground, 3 Steam Vents, and 3 Basic Mountain as your actual like mana producing lands. I'm playing 18 lands. I mean, with like Dragon Rage Channeler plus like Mishra's Bauble, things like that. Like you're going to end up keeping a lot of 1-landers with this deck, excuse me, and you're going to be able to hit your land drops pretty consistently. Kind of weird seeing a deck that plays 18 lands and can actually support playing an Underworld Breach and can have some pretty insane Breach turns. Again, just even playing this for like 2 mana and having like 2 Dragon Rage Channelers out with a Bauble, you're going to end up like losing 1 card in your graveyard, but you're going to cast Bauble how many times, and you're going to be able to trigger Slick Shot, Show Off, Soulscar Mage, Swift Spear an ungodly amount of times, like even 5-6 times. If you have 2 Swift Spears in play and you cast Bauble 5 times, that's 12 attacking power that you have coming at your opponent, which is definitely not nothing considering that like this is like a setup that you could have like on turn 3 or turn 4 as well. Obviously not the most ideal situation. You want to have a Slick Shot Show Off and play for that, because then that's just 13 damage off of just 1 creature versus 12 from 2. But, this is still like an insane amount of value that you can get from... Actually, no, I think it's like ends up being 1 less, but of course you have like 1 creature in play. Whatever. So sideboard, you have Tormod's Crypt is another free non-creature spell that is going to mess with your opponent's graveyard. Pick your poison. Of course, like this is just... been one of the best sideboard cards since it's been printed, and definitely probably one of the most played ones since it's been printed. Spell Pierce is good at cheap interaction. You have Curse Totem for the Yawgmoth decks. You have a Delay, which counters the spell, and if it was removed this way, put 3 time counters on it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. If it doesn't have Suspend, it gains Suspend. So just kind of like a nice, basically counter spell. Blood Moon is going to absolutely hose your opponents, because even though you do have some blue spells in here, and of course you have like a Pick Your Poison in the sideboard, you can very easily just not play Preordain and Expressive Iteration and just bring in Blood Moon and get your opponent. Finally, there's also a Flame of Anor, Slick Shot Show Off, Soulscar Mage, Monastery Swift Spear are all wizards. Dragon's Rage Channeler is not, though. I guess it makes sense as the Shaman. So Flame of Anor, if you control a wizard, you can choose 2 modes instead. So drawing 2 cards, destroying an artifact, dealing 5 damage to target creature. Just a really good value for 3 mana, and especially good when you have a wizard in play, so you can get into play like a Slick Shot Show Off, like Plotted, and then you play your 3rd land, cast a Slick Shot Show Off, you're able to play the Flame of Anor, and your opponent's not really able to kind of interact and stop you from getting to choose multiple modes, getting to draw 2 cards, destroy an artifact that might be a little bit annoying to deal with, or just getting a big creature out of the way, something like a Shieldred, if you will, at least potentially for later, and even like Yawgmoth, stuff like that. I mean, this is like a very good card where you're able to get some card advantage going and kill your opponent's biggest threat. And that is the Temur Prowess deck for Modern. This deck is built on speed and just trying to catch your opponents off guard. I'd say probably decently bad against something like the, Leyline plus Scion combo, even though I think it's starting to see kind of like a downtick in play, even though I think like 4-color and 5-color, domain aggro is still a pretty good deck to be playing. This deck is very explosive against every other deck. If you stumble and you're playing against this deck, there's a very good chance that you end up dying. This is essentially what the burn decks of the format have become, where I think just like the days of playing like Boros Charm and Skullcrack and things like that just aren't it when you could be playing Slick Shot Show Off and these Prowess creatures, even like Dragon Rage Channeler, and having this sweet Underworld Breach package alongside some of these burn spells, where even though you only have 4 Lightning Bolt, 4 Lava Dart in the deck, it's going to feel like a lot more Lightning Bolts when you slam Underworld Breach with a stacked graveyard and like 4 or 5 lands in play. So definitely a deck that, at least for the time being, I think is worth playing. And I think a deck that is always going to be kind of like a nice kind of budget option, being just under $450. It's playing a lot of the lands that you're going to end up wanting anyway. A lot of the creatures end up going up towards like Pioneer. Same thing with like the mana base as well. Like you could play like a blue-red, Slick Shot deck in Pioneer if you wanted to. But this deck is just kind of a nice little introduction to the format, play for a while, and then we have Modern Horizons 3 coming out. We're going to be able to look over some winners and losers and who's going to be getting the most and who's going to be absolute trash when that set releases. And until then, this deck is definitely a really good option. Again, if your opponent stumbles for even a minute, you're just going to be able to punish them pretty severely with Slick Shot Show Off, just being able to output tons and tons of damage. So that's going to do it for me in this video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on the video. Comment down below what Modern deck you would like to see next. Again, if you want to support me and my content, a free, easy way of doing that is subscribing to the channel and ring the notification bell to get notified about future videos. That is going to do it for me. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you all in the next one.